In my last video of recreating all of the Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach Ruin DLC in Minecraft, we took a look at Chapter 7 and built all of Bonnie Bowl. But now continuing on with this series, today we're going to be moving on to Chapter 8 of Ruin and the final main attraction of the Pizzaplex and build Fazablast. Before we begin, I'd quickly like to remind you that if you do enjoy this video, then please make sure to leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on, so that way you can help support me throughout this build. But without any more further ado, let's take a look at Fazablast. In every project I've ever worked on, there's always been one part of it that I always dread to get to, and this one is no different. The instant that I saw Fazablast for the first time in Ruin, I knew that it wouldn't be an easy task to complete, as this is undoubtedly one of the most trashed areas in the game. Though not the biggest attraction of the Pizzaplex, Fazablast has so much going on in such small areas that it can become very overwhelming to look at all at once. While half of the maze layout is still standing upright, the opposite side of the attraction is completely covered in rubble, which makes it very hard to even make out what you're looking at. So when it was time to prepare for the Minecraft build, I had to carefully go through one section of the room at a time and only mark down the most important details for the outlines. While I prefer to put as much detail into these as possible, there needs to be a balance between how much outlining there can be versus how much there should be, especially with an attraction as detailed as Fazablast. However, key features like the layout of the maze itself have been fully marked down one for one, since it's what makes up the main structure of the build itself, and almost everything else depends on where they're positioned at. But with that being said, that now wraps up all of the planning stages for this build, meaning the next thing to do is to get started working on the build itself. And now with a total build time of 9 hours and 17 minutes, the main attraction of Faserblast has been fully built. I definitely overestimated how difficult this would be to work on, as though the completed build is very messy to look at, the room itself is split into two halves, which made it a lot easier for me to focus on one part of it at a time. The first sequence starts on the side where we enter through Vanny's hideout, before then making it down to the winner's lounge, and eventually inside the arena itself, where we then have to deactivate the security nodes. From there, we're then teleported to the second sequence at the opposite side of the attraction, which is blocked off from the first half by a wall of trash that goes through the middle of the arena. This section is purely focused on the Glamrock Freddy chase sequence, as instead of being able to freely roam around the maze, there's a single linear path that we have to follow to escape from Freddy. This eventually leads down to the supply closet at the corner of the room, where a vent system connects back to the Roxy Raceway through the hallways behind the party garages. Now, while Faserblast itself doesn't have nearly as many areas to explore compared to the base game, there's still a lot of details put into it that make it one of the more visually appealing parts of Ruin. Character cutouts of Lolzhax and Glamrock Chica in her spacesuit are still relatively intact, and the walls of the attraction itself still have the red and white space patterns all around them. The rest of the Glamrock cutouts, however, have either fallen over or have been completely covered up by the rubble, which blocks off the stairway to the second floor balconies. This includes the center platform that has also been cut off, as the giant rocket ship that used to sit above the room has broken apart and fallen down to the floor. Even the hanging walkway that leads from the storage basement to the security office has collapsed across the room, as support beams and pipes have been damaged, with some of them even reaching down to the floor of the arena. Overall, Faserblast was another fun challenge to work on, and it now leaves only one area left to add before the entire building part of this project has been fully completed. However, before we get to that, there's still one last addition that needs to be made to Faserblast, which is to add in all the glitching objects for its AR form. And compared to every other attraction in Ruin, Faserblast might have the most unique changes made to it, as there's an entire space battle going on between Lolzhax and a rocket ship. These changes in the AR dimension are always the most interesting part of any build, as it takes objects from the normal world and puts them in places that would usually be impossible. However, since we still want to be able to explore the normal world, these additions will be made in a copy of the build that's placed underneath the main one, so that way we can travel between the two by using the Vanny mask. So to wrap up this part of the project, let's get into one last time lapse and complete all of Chapter 8 of Ruin. The AR version of Faserblast has now been built, and another section of the ruined Mega Pizzaplex has been fully completed. Taking a deeper look at these new changes, while most of it is focused on one corner of the room, there are still a lot of smaller details around the attraction, such as holographic replacements of the original props, and of course the sword in the Princess Quest arcade machine in Vanny's hideout. However, the parts that stand out the most are of course all inside the giant holographic sphere, where Lolzhax is now floating above the arena alongside two other TV screens, and are shooting red lasers at a glitched out rocket ship, all while random Faserblast objects are floating all around them. Though none of these changes affect the actual gameplay itself, it's still a really cool visual to look at while walking around the different parts of the attraction. And as far as all of the AR builds in this project go, this has been the last main alternate version of a build, as every single attraction has now been fully built, and there are now only a couple of small AR changes that are left to add for the rest of the project. Not only that, but with Chapter 8 now all completed, there is only one chapter of Ruin left to add before the entirety of the ruined Mega Pizzaplex has been fully completed. But for now, this area was definitely one of the more unique parts of the Pizzaplex to work on, but I think that the ending result has turned into another amazing addition to the build. But that is now going to wrap it up for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it and are excited to see the final part of this project come together. If you're interested in that and all future projects of mine, then make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on, so that way you know the next time I upload, and can also help the channel to continue to grow. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I will of course see you in my next video.